Thank you for joining us, Purvi ma'am.
It's an absolute pleasure.
Can you start by telling us about your background and how you became interested in organic farming and food geography as you used to as you teach in schools?
Right. Um, it's a long winded story. Um, I don't think my foray into organic farming was straight off into organic farming. So, like, I have a master's in environmental management. And once I returned from Australia, I was doing a lot of consultancy work with a lot of organizations. But there was something missing. I was saying all these things and I was telling people what to do with their lives, switch on your fans, use both sides of the paper, blah, blah, blah. But somehow, what I was saying and how I was living my life, there was a disconnect. It wasn't reflecting in my life what I was telling other people to do. And by chance, I happened upon this research project by a fantastic woman called Beena Agarwal. She's got the Padma Shri for, she's a feminist writer. So she's written a book called A Field of One's Own for women's land rights. And so she was doing a research in south of Gujarat, and I landed up a researcher's project with her, and I ended up living with a Adivasi community, Vasawa community in south of Gujarat. It was not required for me to stay there full time, but I just loved being there, and I loved hanging out with them, learning stuff from them. And so I ended up spending my whole year in a village in South Gujarat. And I think that was the turning point of my life. All these different concepts that we have, sustainability, living, minimalism, and this and that, and all these terms that we've come up with. This community was living that without understanding any of those terms, having, any reflection of that. But the key point was at the end of the day, they were so joyful. I mean, I was staying with this woman whose house was no bigger than your studio. She had like a string across the room, and, most of her belongings were there and something on the side. But the joy with which she lived her life and, the enthusiasm that she had towards everything just had a big impression on me. And when I came back, I was, through this phase where I was looking for meaning and, doing something purposeful. And one weekend, we have a weekend home in Matar, Kheda, and my mom was like, I want to go there. Will you drive me? And it's like, farm? Who wants to go to a farm, right? Like,
You lived in Ahmedabad at that?
I did. And so I was like, farm? Who wants to go to a farm? And my mom's like, you have to come. And so I ended up driving her there on the weekend. And I looked around and I was like, this is not so bad. This is nice. And I thought to myself, if this is all I had, how would I live my life? And so I decided to stay back. And I never returned. So I've been there for about 15, 16 years now, learning how to farm, living on a farm, living with a rural community. And
That's amazing to hear.
sorry for the long-winded
No,
story.
no. It's amazing to hear such stories always. Ma'am, you're launching a book today.
I'm not launching a book. Ahmedabad University, we did a project with them called the Food Lab. And so we looked at how do we, with climate change and, all the other changes happening around the world, how do you look at the past and learn from the past to use it for the future? So usable past for the future. And so collectively, we looked at food, housing, and shelter. Roti, kapda, makan.
Okay.
So they did a food lab where we had a lot of discussions on these three areas, and they're compiling it together, and there's a launch of the book for that.
So the book is called.
I have no idea.
Oh,
We
okay.
have to. I will come to know today what it's called and
Oh, okay.
you know how they've gone ahead with it.
Okay,
So
so it's a team.
yeah, it's a food, shelter, and housing. So I looked after the food lab,
Ah,
so to
sounds
say.
good. Uh, let's jump into organic farming for a second.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, Organic farming, when you hear this term, you often think about the challenges that organic farming has. It somewhat relates to the yield. It relates to pest control. It relates to how not using fertilizers may somehow affect the crop, because there may not be enough nutrients in the soil, and by so
Right.
how do you deal with these problems, and what are the other problems? Because I am not a farmer, I don't understand the problems of farming.
Right.
So how do you deal with these problems in organic farming?
Organic farming has become a very loaded word, if I'm allowed to say that. It's kind of an elitist movement at the moment. Um, Before the 1960s, before the Green Revolution, everything was organic, right?
Yes.
It was post the Green Revolutions when chemicals, post the Second World War, when the chemicals were introduced. And it was believed that you required only NPK, which is nitrogen, phosphorus, and potassium. A combination of those three are enough to give you food yields. And it was a very reductionist way of looking at growing food. Now, organic farming is seen in a couple of different ways. A lot of organic farmers see organic farming as a replacement method. So you remove the chemicals from farming and you replace them with manure or organic matter, and they think that is you
Organic.
keep everything else the same. So if you're growing only wheat, which is monoculture, or only rice or only cotton, so green revolution depends on monoculture to get the yields. So a lot of people farm organically by just removing the chemicals. The other way of looking at organic farming is looking at it as a whole system, like an ecosystem, right?
Okay.
And the kind of organic farming that I'm looking at it is looking at it as a whole system, that you look at a farm, my farm, as a unit of ecosystem. So you will not just have crops growing there, but you will also have trees, you will also have a little bit of a water body, you will have animals, you will have vegetables. So it becomes like a
Ecosystem.
ecosystem.
Okay.
Now, there are a lot of problems in transitioning to organic. And some of the basic problems you already mentioned, like the soil might not have enough nutrients. Now, soil is the foundation of organic farming. Soil is,
Okay.
what makes or breaks the farm in a sense. So, in organic farming, what one has to do is, because of the chemicals, the soil becomes infertile, dead, right? The micronutrients that help the plants grow, sort of over a period of time, because of continuous chemical applications, the micronutrients in the soil deplete. And so one of the job of organic farmers is to bring make the soil alive again. And so that is one of the toughest tasks. To make the soil alive takes anywhere between 3 to 5 years, depending on how depleted your soil becomes. And also, because of the use of, so in nature, there are, because you mentioned pests, in nature, there are two kinds of pests. The simplest way to explain them is, one is the vegetarian pest and one is the non-vegetarian pest.
Okay.
The vegetarian pests are the one that eat your crop, your leaves, your flowers, and then the non-vegetarian pests are the ones that eat the vegetarian pests, that are
Okay.
eating your leaves. So the vegetarian pests are the problematic pests for you
As a farmer,
as a farmer.
so they do not add any kind of a value to the farm, or
I mean, they do add value, but because one of the things that farmer wants is a good
Good
yield,
yield. Okay.
and they can have an impact
On the
on the
yield.
yield.
Okay.
But in nature, nature takes care of the good and the bad pests. So if you have a pest that is eating your leaf, then you would in nature there would be another pest that would eat its egg or would eat its baby, and keep the numbers in check. But when you use pesticides, you kill both,
Okay.
right? So bringing that balance back into nature, bringing back the good and the balance between the good and the bad pest takes a long time. The water is contaminated. I mean, in India, the small farm holding is so small that it's difficult to have a separate source of water that is not already affected by chemicals from the neighboring farm and things like that. So, organic farming has a lot of its challenges. It requires a lot of patience and a lot of time for transition. And so, one of the biggest problem is that small and marginal farmers who are directly dependent on agriculture for survival, they can't transition on their own without external support.
Okay.
So, if I'm dependent on the farm alone for all my income, and if I want to transition to organic, then my production will go down. My input cost will go up. My labor charges will go up because, you can't use machine. You can use machinery, but like for an average conventional farmer, he can have a VD side. So supposing you have a tomato growing and then you have something growing around it. A conventional farmer can spray a VD site and the tomato will survive and the rest will die.
Okay.
For an organic farmer, he has to manually remove them,
Okay. Makes
right?
sense.
So that way he will require more
More labor.
labor.
Okay.
So his input cost goes up.
Okay.
And, with cow manure, it's not like urea that you apply it and it gets absorbed and, boom, the plant gets.
It's not that easy.
Yeah. So, the microorganism in the soil have to break down the manure, make the nutrients available to the roots. So it's a long process. One is fast food. Nitrogen is like fast food. You just grab it from Macca's and you're ready to eat. And the other one is like cooking your own meal. So you get the raw ingredients and then you have to cook it. So in that sense, organic farming, you don't see a lot of people transitioning to organic farming is because of these reasons, that it's expensive, it's laborious, it's time consuming. The transition period is
3 to
longer
5 years.
and there is no policy support.
Okay.
So, you get subsidies on, chemical fertilizers and pesticides and hybrid seeds and all of those things. Whereas if you want to transition to organic, you have to do it on your own.
There are no incentives.
There is an organic policy in Gujarat, but it hasn't been put into practice. There is a lot of emphasis in Gujarat at the moment on natural farming and cow-based farming, Gaya-dharit kheti.
Okay.
So the governor of Gujarat is very passionate about it and it's very good. But also that has its limitation. So in a sense, there is no, how during the Green Revolution, systems were put into place for people to adopt those new technologies. So systems are not in place for people to transition from those technologies to organic. And so it makes it difficult for an average farmer to do that.
Are these also the reasons why organic products are still expensive?
Yes. I mean, organic products are expensive for two reasons. And this is my thinking. One reason is because it's an elitist movement, right? When you keep the prices high, you make the commodity more exciting to people, right? So a whole bunch of people then can say, I only drink organic oolong tea from, some part of the world, and, it becomes a trend. The second is that, yes, it is expensive because of the input cost going up, the labor cost going up, the transition cost going up. And eventually, after the transition period, the price should come down, because then once the soil becomes healthy, the production is, gets better, the input cost comes down. But to sort of motivate the farmers to transition to organic, they've been told this story कि अगर आप organic में transfer, can I switch to Hindi?
So Hindi, Gujarati, everything is fine.
Yeah. So, તમે ઓર્ગેનિક કરશો તો તમને 4 ગણા પ્રાઇઝ મળશે. Right? Like, how do you motivate people to transition? Right? So, one of the things for
Okay,
motivating people is to say that you transition to organic and you'll get 4 times what you're getting right now. And so the farmer feels that the minute he stopped applying urea or DAP to
He will
his,
get 4
he's
times,
organic.
yeah.
He's organic, right? So there is all these different elements, permutation, combinations that have happened over the years, which has, kept the prices high.
Okay.
Yeah.
You mentioned about monoculture. Can you elaborate on what monoculture is?
Right.
Apart from the word monocropping, I think, how are the two different?
Same
It's
thing,
the
same thing. So basically, before organic, before green revolution, majority of the farmers grew crops for sustenance. So if I was a farmer, I would grow a little bit of grains, I would grow a little bit of dal, I would grow a little bit of sesame or peanuts for oil, I would grow a little bit of cotton, I would grow a little bit of fodder. And the reason I would do multi-cropping, polycropping is that it would provide me security. That if I'm growing 8 or 10 crops,
It's like an insurance.
yes, exactly. Because of weather change, because of, rain not coming or some climatic
આ ફેલ થશે તો આ તો નીકળી જશે.
Exactly. And there's a wonderful system of farming in Kutch. They call it ram mol. They grow 8 different crops together. And in one of the research that I heard about at a conference last week was that they did a research for over 30 years. And in this ram mol of intercrop system, in that 30 years, 26 years, even though there was, problems with the rain and delay or early rain and all of that situation, people were able to get income out of that system, right? Traditional farming system. What happened with Green Revolution was that the crops were designed so they could take in more fertilizer, they could take in more water, right? And they were designed with machinery in mind. The idea was to increase production for commodity markets.
So are we talking, when you say the crops were designed, how are they designed from genetically?
No, they were not genetic. They were hybridized. So you would take two varieties of wheat, and then you would take the traits that you like. So if you look at desi seeds, they grow very high in height. Because in desi varieties, grain was of course important, but also fodder was very important. So if you have a long stalk of grain, then you take the grains are the seeds, and then the rest of the stalk becomes either fodder for your animals, or you know how they make a thatch roof material for that, building material for that. So you did not grow crops only for eating, right? You had multiple purposes. So you would grow one variety for fodder, even though the grains wouldn't be fantastic, but it would be great fodder for your animals. So you'd grow one variety of that. You would grow one variety that would be very good for your thatch of the house. So there were multiple reasons people were growing multiple things, seed varieties. But with Green Revolution, the idea of growing crops was, one, of course, to increase food production, and the second was to build a commodity market where food could be exported, right? To create a business. So from sustenance, we've moved on to business, right?
And that happened because of a boost in the population, or was it something else?
It's a complicated, it's a geopolitical story. So after the Second World War, the Cold War between America and Russia was going on. And America had a strong belief that if people were not hungry, they would not be attracted to communism. The Russian
Okay.
and Chinese way of life. And so two things happened at that time. At that time, Mexico, I forget the president's name, but Mexican president sort of was elected, and he was nationalizing majority of the natural resources. And Rockefeller Foundation is heavily invested in fossil fuels, right? And so that meant that when a country nationalizes its resources, private companies lose a large chunk of their
Makes sense.
influence. And so they started an experiment of green revolutionary technology with Norman Borlaug. I'm sure you've heard the name. Norman Borlaug is called the father of the Green Revolution.
Okay.
And he won the Nobel Peace Prize. It's very interesting because he won the Peace Prize because Nobel believed that, growing more food meant there was more peace in the world. And
Is that thought is that thought not noble? I mean, let's separate the practicalities of it from what the thought is.
I mean, it's for one to decide.
Okay.
I mean, I don't think the Green Revolution started off
With that thought.
with an evil thought that,
Okay. That's what I'm
we
asking.
want
Yes.
to, conquer the world, or did not start with the evil thought, but the impacts of the Green Revolution that we see around the world, environmentally, economically, are devastating. Punjab was the heartland of the Green Revolution. You know what's happening in Punjab.
Yep.
It's a desert now. Water tables have gone down. So, the soil is degraded. Environmentally, you look at any part of the world and look at the impact of the chemicals that we're using on the environment. Look at the impact of the chemicals that are happening to people, right? In Punjab itself, I'm sure you've heard of this cancer train that's going from Bhatinda to a place in Rajasthan. So, the implication of the Green Revolution is something probably that we didn't think through.
Yes.
But I think one needs to step back and look at it and analyze it
Okay.
because of the impact that is having at such a huge scale, right? We need to reassess the implication of the policy over a long period of time. So it was during that era. So in Mexico, they tried out with wheat because they thought that this technology would not be used by, small farmers. So they were targeting bigger farmers. So they tried out wheat in Mexico, whereas corn, as you know, is the staple there. Majority of the peasants eat corn. Didn't do very well at that time, because of British leaving us and our country being in chaos. We had a situation where we had food shortage. And it's very important to understand that the food shortage was not so much in rural areas. It was more in urban areas. And just like our colonizers, we were also in a way moving towards industrialization. And so we wanted to provide cheap food for the laborers of the factories. And so a lot of the food that was brought in from America, from ship, was distributed in the cities and then, given through the PDS to the laborers in the cities and for the industries that they were working there. And so we had the really good deal with America at that time, that they would give us the food grains. We didn't even have to pay for it in the dollars. We could pay it in rupees, and whatever amount we paid would be invested back in India itself.
Okay.
So it was a win-win situation for us. And then in 1970s boom, we went to war with Pakistan,
Pakistan.
and that made America very unhappy. But at that time, their grain reserve also was coming down, right? During the war, they were helping Europe also feed itself. But after the war, Europe said, we'll look after ourselves. We don't need your support anymore. And so they had this grain reserve, and that's why it was very easy for them to provide India with the extra grain. And so it was during that time that America said, well, you know what? We're not going to give you this food grains anymore till you make an effort to become self-sustaining. And we can help you with that, with this green revolutionary technology. So William Goud was the Secretary of State. So USAID, Rockefeller Foundation, Ford Foundation, all of these agencies were working on this technology at that time. And our agriculture minister went to America to see the technology, and he was incredibly impressed and said, yes, this is going to work for us. We're going to feed ourselves, and we're going to be self-sustained. And it did. In just a few years, we had massive food grains, and we were self-sustained, and we export it as well now. But coming back to your point of monocrops and monoculture, is that these grains are designed in a lab, and they work only when certain parameters are available. So if you have the seed, then you require water for it, a certain amount of water. You require a certain amount of fertilizer for it to grow, right? Whereas the desi seed has evolved based on its geography, right? And the crops were designed to be grown as a single crop. So monoculture. So if you have rice, then you have acres and acres of rice. Then if you have wheat, then you have acres and acres of wheat. So it's easy to manage them. You can spray them with pesticides, and So in that sense, what monoculture is done. Do you remember Vandana Shiva?
Yep.
Yeah. So Vandana Shiva says that we've got this massive increase in production because we replaced a lot of crops by growing these two crops, rice and wheat.
So it doesn't apply to the overall growth of all crops.
That is her perception.
Okay.
And also the fact is that we are importing a lot of things. Like majority of our dals, majority of our oil, we import from other countries.
Which we used to make on our own.
Which we used to grow on our own.
Okay.
So when you look at increase in production, it's majorly increase in production of rice and wheat. And that's because a lot of area has been replaced from polyculture intercropping to monocultures of rice and wheat. So the increase has happened over the years.
Okay.
Now after 60, how many years? 75 years of independence?
Yeah, more than that.
More than that. Now we've this year announced the International Year of Millets.
Yes.
Right?
That's something that's come up this year.
Yes. So now millets is something that all of us ate. Millets is very indigenous to India.
Correct. Mara dada to pehla thikha tha. Now it's fashion.
Exactly.
It's brought up now.
Now millets is a superfood.
Yes.
Nutri cereal, superfood. And it's excellent that we're bringing it back because it's very climate resilient. Tame millets nu jo geography pramane. So North Gujarat, where there's less water, will have bajra.
Yes.
South Gujarat, which has slightly more rain, will have things like ragi. Then you have kodra, you have bunti, you have bauta. I'm sure you've not heard half. I can see the glaze
Bunti,
coming.
you lost me at bunti.
Yeah, I can see the glaze coming over your eyes like, huh? But, so these were the grains that were replaced by rice and wheat, right? We started giving rice and wheat in the PDS system. And so a lot of the younger generation in rural India now don't want to eat millets. They think that it's an inferior crop.
It's not fancy. Okay.
It's not fancy because its color is dark, it's hard, it's coarse to
Yes.
eat, rotli soft hoy, white bhat, easy to eat. And so what I'm trying to say with this point is that we did that whole thing of production because the focus of Green Revolution was on production, but we lost out on nutrition and variety. And we've realized that, and we're coming back to nutrition and variety. So monoculture is like that. It was focused on only one thing, yield and production, and not very many other things.
So when it did give a good production, did the nutritional value of the product come down with time, or was it okay and it spoiled only the soil, or did it spoil both?
No, I mean, a lot of studies are saying that repeated and overuse of chemicals over a period of time reduces the amount of nutrition in the crops. See, the nutrition in the crops comes through the micronutrients in the soil. When they reduce the sweetness and the flavor and all that other things that comes from the soil itself. And so there are a few, I mean, I can't say for sure, we have to look that up, but there is a consensus that the nutrition and the taste and the flavor over a period of time has gone down. I mean, you can ask your grandfather, tameta pela flavor ma vadhare
Rich
hata
in
tha.
flavor, yes.
Yeah, now things
No,
taste
I mean,
blander.
you can directly compare it to the West. I think they have everything in good shape, good color. But a lot of my friends were there who they would always say they're less tastier than what they are here.
Right.
If you go and buy tomatoes or any vegetable for that matter,
Right.
you will get, it will not be as proper as it could be. It will not look that fancy, but it'll taste better than what they.
Exactly. That's because primarily we eat food by aesthetics now. We
Now,
don't,
yes.
We don't eat food for nutrition. I mean, even me 15 years ago, before I delved into this whole world of food and, recognized I would go into a supermarket and I would also probably look at a tomato and say, okay, આ નાનું છે આ નહીં આ મોટું ને shiny છે, these all look the same, let me get these. Right? So the idea of aesthetics and the idea of food being similar and all of that came to us through supermarkets, right? Supermarkets required food to be a certain way because they had to travel the food, they had to keep it on the shelf for a long time. And so if you had 15 varieties of potatoes or say apples, out of that only three or four varieties could manage everything. That they could travel probably, they wouldn't spoil, they would stay on the shelf. Even after you took them home, they should be all right for a week or two. So dhime, the varieties started reducing. And then slowly we also started recognizing, okay, I am buying this because this looks bigger, this looks shinier, white rice. When we
better sometimes.
Sometimes. But slowly we're unlearning. But a lot of different factors have added to.
But so monocropping is spoiling the soil, right?
Yes,
it's definitely affected.
Well, not just monocropping itself. Monocropping, see what happens, the problem with monocropping, what happens is, supposing you're an insect and you're able to open up that one rice seed pod, right? Now, if you can open up one rice seed pod and you have acres and acres of rice, it's all you can eat buffet for them, right? There's no stopping them then.
Yes.
But if there is multi-cropping, you can open the rice, but you might not be able to open up the dal. You might not be able to open the sesame. So in that sense, what it does is it increases the use of pesticides over a period of time. It reduces, you keep growing the same crop, then the nutrients used every time are the same. So the soil gets depleted in that way. So not just one monocropping, but like what
factors
leads and what happens because of the monocropping has led to the problems. Yeah.
I was listening to Vandana Shiva ma'am's lecture, and she is an advocate for seed sovereignty, and they run, I think, Navdanya. Can you talk more about that? What is seed sovereignty?
Right. So basically, the seeds that come out of the Green Revolution, hybrid seeds, when you plant hybrid seeds, you get yield for 1 year.
I'm sorry to interrupt, but hybrid is not genetically
No,
modified, right? They are two different things.
yes. So
Okay.
hybrid is the same species. In genetically modified, you
Oh, cross.
introduce a gene from a different species.
Okay.
Say take BT cotton for instance. So in BT cotton, they have a gene from the soil, or they have a gene, say, of a fish introduced into a tomato. Right. So
Okay.
two species that would normally never
Never.
intersect
Okay.
in nature. So that is genetically modifying. Hybridization is taking two good parents and then their traits to get a third variety. So with hybrids, when you buy the seeds, you can grow them once, and પછી બીજા season ma you don't
They
get that
won't.
kind of production. So you have to go back. You're dependent on the market. Seed sovereignty basically means that you have sovereignty over your own seed available. So you're not dependent on market at all. And so that's exactly what farmers used to do before the Green Revolution. You would save your own seeds, plant them, harvest them again,
Share
save
it with
them.
your friends or whatever.
Let me give you an example. You know what Goro is? Gauri Vrat? Gauri
Yeah,
Vrat?
the 5 days fast
Yeah.
that. Okay. That one.
So all my life, I thought Gauri Vrat is this Vrat so you can get a good husband. Never did it. Probably that's why I'm still single. But once I moved to the rural areas, I understood Gauri Vrat comes just before planting season, sowing season. And so in the Gauri Vrat, they usually plant seeds that are available with the family. And they put it outside the house, and the girl does puja every day. Now what happens with this? Everyone knows કે ઘરમાં જે seeds છે ગૌરી વ્રતના પેલા બાસ્કેટમાં મૂક્યા છે, બરોબર? So when you walk in and out of the neighborhood, I'm looking at your pot and thinking, oh, Keval's moong has come out really well. You look at mine and see, oh, her bajra has come out really well. And so it also becomes a medium through which we can exchange our seeds.
Okay.
It's a testing of seeds before the sowing season.
Okay.
Right? So you tie it up with a religion, you tie it up with systems, but it's also very practical in a sense.
Okay.
And so it was fascinating for me to learn
It is
to
fascinating.
do that.
I mean, from what we know of Gauri Vrat.
Yeah, exactly. And so in that way, farmers had systems in place. They would have seed banks. They would have majority of the seed savers, if you look at rural communities, are women.
Okay.
Women are the guardians of the seed. They pick and choose and select seeds for the next year. So seed sovereignty is a very important thing when a farmer is losing control over the basis of his farming, which is the seed. Seed is the foundation of agriculture, foundation of life. And when you have to buy it from the market every season, not only it increases his cost of production, but there is also a risk attached to it. So to counter that and all the other problems that are associated with that, the idea of seed sovereignty.
Okay. So when you talk about organic farming, it is often it doesn't go without talking about the big players who are into royalty seeking, making hybrid or genetically modified seeds, like the players like Monsanto, which is now Bayer, I think.
Bayer has bought them over.
And Bayer is I think I use something I use an ointment made by Bayer. So it's very, I don't know.
Bayer is huge.
It's German, I think. Right?
Yeah, it's German. Yeah. It's fascinating because more than 60% of the seed market is owned by only 4 companies in the world.
Of the world?
Yeah.
Okay.
So the corporate consolidation of monopoly of the markets, it's amazing. So, sorry, I interrupted you while you were...
No, that was my question about how are these big players affected?
Big players are big players are huge into agriculture now. If you look at the present, Microsoft, Google, Facebook, Reliance, Bayer, Bayer and all of that, Syngenta, all those companies, they're hugely invested in agriculture. And I think one of the reasons for that is food is fundamental. Food is
Correct.
an eternal necessity. And to have control over what one eats or what one should eat is tremendous power.
Vagar mandi no business.
Exactly.
Correct.
Nobody says કે मैं આજે ખાધું છે એટલે હવે હું 3 વર્ષ પછી
Correct.
વિચારીશ
So it's
ખાવાનું.
always, yeah.
And Bill Gates is the biggest owner of farmland in America at the moment.
Okay, huh.
He's hugely trying to influence farming in Africa at the moment. Africa missed out on the green revolution in the 60s, and they think that it's imperative that this technology should be available for them, that they should have access to it. Lot of countries are accepting it, and then a lot of countries are resisting it. But the kind of corporate interest, power, and money that is there, it's going to be hard to say that they're going to let go of it anytime soon.
Okay. What is a possible business model that they could be thinking of?
Business model is of selling inputs.
Okay.
So basically, once you buy the seed, you have to buy it every time.
So royalties,
yeah.
basically.
Then with the seed is married to the fertilizer. When you start using the fertilizer and the seeds and you start doing monoculture, the biodiversity and the ecosystem balance is broken. So then you have to buy the pesticides.
Okay.
Right.
So they're basically introducing problems for which they will sell solutions later on.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yep.
It's exactly what Monsanto, Bayer, they did. They got good genetically modified seeds, but then they modified it in a way where you have to go and keep buying those products from them.
Yeah, absolutely. And Monsanto has faced a lot of royalty issues in Gujarat itself with potatoes.
Is it the McCain factory?
No,
in North?
not McCain is a different country, but so I've forgotten the details, but like briefly what I do remember is that a potato farmer kind of saved his own potato seed.
Okay.
And the company, probably not Monsanto, PepsiCo is the company that gave them the seeds for contract farming. And Monsanto has faced problems with BT cotton royalty.
Okay.
So PepsiCo was like, you can't save the seeds, and they went to court and all of that. And in India, we're still legally allowed to save our seeds. Whereas what has happened in the West is, especially in countries like America and parts of South America, some parts of Europe, is saving seeds has become an illegal act now. Through corporate lobbying, they've been able to pass a law whereby saving your own seed could be infringement on their royalty or their company, this thing. So because we still have that, freedom to save our own seeds.
Are they pushing it in India as well?
They are.
How is the government?
Fingers crossed, Parliament doesn't pass it and, all of that. So with Monsanto, the BT cotton is failing. So BT cotton, the gene is put in that the flower gets a bollworm insect, and the BT cotton will produce its own pesticides to deter the bollworm insect from attacking the plant. And it's not doing it so well.
Okay.
And so the farmers are saying, we're not going to pay royalty. It's not doing its job. You've designed it for this to happening, and it's not happening. And the High Court kind of said, yes, that makes sense. But of course, Monsanto will appeal, and
they will take it.
They'll try and, get whatever they can out of it.
So one of their points against or for introducing such genetically modified seeds or hybrid seeds is that they say we are producing food at a large scale to meet the
Growing
high
requirement.
demands of the population, which is also growing at a rapid rate. Uh, how could you tackle it in a different way than increase hybridization or whatever?
See, the basic problem is that we have more than enough food production to feed the world. The problem is not of production, the problem is of access. The problem is of who has money to buy the food.
Okay.
Let me explain it to you. There's a small farmer in South Gujarat, right? He is enticed by Monsanto to say that instead of growing your bajra and your ragi and, your tuar dal, grow BT cotton. It'll give you tremendous yields and it'll give you tremendous of income. Bajra and dal and all that, you can buy it later once you make money from this, right? So they say the seed is for, say, 20,000 rupees. The farmer says, I don't have 20,000. So Monsanto says, why do you worry? I'll come with you to the bank, help you get credit, blah, 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 or I'll help you get credit from someone. You don't worry. Once you buy it, you're scot free. Two scenarios can happen. One, the first season he does well. And so he's hooked on it. Okay, yes, આ તો બહુ સારું છે, બહુ સરસ income મળે છે આમાં. Second scenario is that the first year only there's a drought or some other condition where crops fail. What happens in that situation is that the farmer has invested everything into that farm. And at the end of the day, he makes no money out of it.
Okay.
And so even though he's a farmer, he has no money available to purchase that food. So in a lot of cases, the problem is not of production. The problem is of access to money. Who has the money and who has the ability to be able to buy that food, right? Now, what a lot of activists who are against the GM technology are not saying that technology is bad. Are not saying that one should not experiment with technology and one should not make innovations. But they are saying is, who is the technology in the hand of? How are they using it? Right? If you want to feed the world, why is the price of your seed so high?
Correct.
Why are you charging a royalty on it? If it is a noble initiative, why are you charging for it? Why is it married to your pesticide only? Why is it married to your fertilizer only?
Correct.
Make it, open source, right? Now, majority of the technology research is done on public money, which is our tax dollar. Once they come up with the technology, it becomes private property, right? Then it becomes their invention. So there are a lot of ethical issues attached with GM technology. It has nothing to do with technology, but it's about power, it's about control and ethical issues associated with it. So it's a very spacious argument. How will we feed the world? It's one of those narratives built by the food industry to say, we have to continue to use it. If you look at a lot of research around the world, you will find that 70% of the food grains come from small and marginal farmers. The big corporations feed either the animals that we eat, the biofuel industry, and other processed food industry. It does not directly feed us, right? It's the small and marginal farmers who are growing these random radishes that we love and the tomatoes and all of that. They are growing these commodity, soya and corn and this and that, things like that. Yeah.
As far as I know, India is only allowed genetically modified cotton, right? And something else? Brinjal? No.
Brinjal, they put a moratorium on it, saying that they'll do more research on it and then decide. They're heavily pushing, the government is heavily pushing GM mustard at the moment.
Mustard.
Rai.
Mm-hmm.
Rye is indigenous to India. If you notice, the companies usually try to push for crops that are indigenous to the place,
Okay.
because once you open the technology, then it's out there. You can't sort of take
So
it.
they are killing it at its root
I
place.
don't know, killing it is a strong word, but they usually go. I mean, GM mustard probably is in place in other countries where GM is allowed,
Okay.
but for us it's like essential, right?
Mm-hmm.
Basic in all our cooking and all of that.
Correct.
So
Correct. So
if it changes, then it changes
it's
a
a big
lot.
market for them.
Yeah, it's huge.
Uh, let's jump into food sourcing and safety, ma'am.
Mm-hmm.
With the rise of online shopping and meal delivery systems, uh, how does a consumer uh, ensure safety of the products that he or she is receiving? Because I know you vouch for growing your own food and all.
But not
So
everyone can do
not
that.
everyone
Yeah.
can do that,
Yeah,
and
yeah.
uh, but I think we've gone on the other way. We are not even going ourselves to the market now. We are relying on somebody else to deliver it to us at our doorsteps.
Right.
So he's doing the picking and choosing. We don't even have that part of it anymore now, the
Right.
choosing part of it. So
Abs-
how do you make sure in such a situation?
I think in such a situation, the simplest thing would be to try and eat local as much as possible. Local in the sense, understand your geography. So if you're trying to eat quinoa, then it's not a grain that India grows.
Okay.
It's local to Mexico. Maybe Indians have started growing it now. But in the sense that, ask your grandparents the kind of diet they kind of ate. So a lot of local variety of things in that sense. um, Eat seasonal.
Season.
One has to learn what is in season. um, the reason why I'm saying is seasonal is because when you grow things according to seasons, then you don't require many external outputs, right? So if you eat cauliflower in summer, especially in Gujarat, I'm saying this in context of Gujarat, cauliflower in summer in Gujarat is not happening. Cauliflower requires a lower temperature for it to grow. So if it's either coming from somewhere else or it's been grown in Gujarat with a lot of inputs for it to survive, right? So eating very close to the seasons would mean that it will be locally available, and your person who's sourcing it will not have to bring it from anywhere else, and that means it will have minimum of inputs in it. So understanding basics about your food, you know um, even if you're sourcing from, say, an online portal, I'm beginning to realize that there are a lot of organic portals as well. And doing a little bit of study of what they are doing. Say, for example, in Ahmedabad, on every Sunday and Thursday, Gujarat Vidyapeeth, right?
Yeah.
So at Gujarat Vidyapeeth and something Bhagwat on Sola Road.
Sola Bhagwat.
Sola Bhagwat. There's a farmer's market.
Okay.
And so farmers from all over Gujarat come and sell their produce. And people go and buy there. But I'm sure in a few months' time, there will be people who will say, "Ki, can you deliver it to our house?" And they will have a system in place. You know what I mean? So
Okay.
slowly, gradually, that will also happen.
Okay.
So I think just basic understanding of what is available in your region and what is available in the season will help you cut down a lot of the issues.
Okay. Um, how does one read food nutrition labels? I mean, it's there on every packet that we're buying it, but I don't do it myself, and I understand the importance of reading a label
Right.
also, but I mean, if I didn't have the time to look at all the packets, what are the few very dangerous things that I should avoid, or something?
If it comes from a package, don't eat it.
Don't eat it.
I mean, if you are going to eat packaged food, see, with labeling, it's a complicated issue because the companies are required to tell you certain things and they can avoid telling you certain things. So,
I was watching something. I was watching a documentary where they were talking about how these the companies in the US, they were outrightly not mentioning what was in their product.
yeah. So things like that, like peanuts or something that are allergens to people and that can be life threatening, they have to mention. But things like sugar, right? A lot of the companies don't mention the percentage of sugar in their produce, right? And so they will use various different terminologies for sugar, like dextrose and sucrose and maltose. And, they have like 50, 60 different names of sugar. So they will use that. And I think it's very important to understand that when you're eating from a package, you have to understand that you're not getting any nutrition out of it. It's entertainment food. The reason why it is in a package is because it can survive in the package. And it can survive in the package because all the things that are nutrition in a product have been taken out of it. And because whatever is the nutritional part of it will make it rot,
Okay.
will reduce the shelf life. So you've essentially taken all the nutrition out of it. It'll have sugar and carbohydrates and some basic things. So recognize the fact that if you're eating packaged food, you're eating,
Preservatives basically, and something that is
yeah,
not so
and that
nutritional.
you're entertaining yourself.
Correct.
It's not really food. So if you have that recognition, you won't have too many expectations and you'll be all right.
Talking about for people who eat non-veg, acquiring meat safely is I mean, there are local shops where you can
Right.
go and the
Right.
person will
Right.
cut it or whatever, butcher the animal in front of you. That may look
Right.
perfect, but how does one make sure that the meat is safe?
I mean, with the chicken industry, we have followed the industrial model of America to the T. Our chicken industry, the broiler
Broiler chickens.
chicken that comes to the market is as infected with hormones and all the other preservatives as possible. So meat is a complicated thing. I mean, if you know of people who grow their own chicken or, I mean, with mutton and all of that, it's even more complicated now, with the political scenario or all the other scenarios. But the chicken is definitely, unless you know it's free range or grown by someone, if it's a broiler chicken, it comes with the baggage of hormones and antibiotics and all the other things attached to it. With the mutton and the buffalo and the cow meat, I don't think there's so many hormones or all of that attached to it, but I don't know where it comes from or how it has been treated. Each city will have its own system.
Okay.
Each town will have its own system. And so you'll have to do a little bit of research
For your own
on
city.
city and town.
Correct.
Like a small town in Matar, I would know the system that this is the butcher, this is his source, or this is the person who does free range, who has chicken as his house. I can pay him and he can clean it and give it to me.
Okay.
So, understanding, like in a big city like Ahmedabad, it's very complicated.
It's very difficult.
Very
also.
difficult, very difficult. So you just have to play it by the ear.
Okay. Let's jump to ultra processed food. And why are they so prevalent in our diets today? I mean, being a young Indian, why is it that I'm eating so?
You tell me.
I know I should not be questioning you about it, but somewhere I feel all of this is being controlled, and the way I behave is largely controlled by larger
Yeah.
entities somewhere around the
Absolutely.
world, not even in at my around me.
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely.
They're designing stuff, and they're the experts, psychologists and food experts and everybody, they're all sitting together, they're designing the colors of the packet that I'm getting my food in.
Absolutely.
They're so niche in their research
Yeah.
that they are getting to me, and they are getting to a lot of people my age and not my age also.
We are the biggest market for them.
Okay.
I mean, the European and the American market is saturated. We are the big, us and the Southeast Asia and Africa the biggest market for them. So they love us. I think one of the biggest narrative that has played into processed food being so prevalent is telling us that our lives are very busy, we don't have time, and this is convenient. Your priority should be going out there, doing something more productive with your time. Any time spent on food is waste of time. So if you're cooking, then it's a waste of time, because Subway can make you a sandwich in 2 minutes and it's grand. But I mean, as individuals, like you say, that they've socially engineered us into thinking about all of these things, and they've played with our biology, right? Do you remember from class, salt, sugar, and fat?
Yes, I have mentioned it.
Yeah,
Here
you've
in my
mentioned it. So, those three are biological triggers. In nature, salt, sugar, and fat were the most difficult things for us to get. And so, even though our environment has changed so much, for the human beings to biologically evolve takes a lot longer than what has happened to us environmentally. And so, when we're eating processed food, the foundation of processed food is salt, sugar, and fat. That's it's a clever combination of all these three. Our biological triggers are activated all the time. And so every time we eat it, our brain goes ting, 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 am I going to get this again? Will I get this? I must consume it as much as I can, because I'm not sure when I will have access to it again. And so because of that, and they also make it very alluring and addictive, right? So you have a Lay's chips, and they've designed this, the size of the chip, the crunchiness, how much pressure you will have to put on it for it to crackle, the sound of the crackle, what will be the flavor that hits your palate the first, right? So, like you said, billions and billions of dollars in food research for you to feel that I love,
Correct.
kurkure, I can't live without it. Kurkure is base for you to, think and
Correct.
feel like that. And it leaves a memory for you, so every time you're away from it, you have a memory that you want to feel all of those things. So
It's scary. I was watching one of these YouTube videos where they break down the compositions of a package or like a snack, and all of it was chemical. All of it was just chemical. I mean, there was no. I mean, they had some fancy calcium this, calcium carbide, this, whatever. I don't remember the good name, but it was all made up chemically.
Right.
So I mean, it's very scary to imagine that what I'm eating is a chemical composition and not food. I mean, food, of course, is a chemical composition, but it's designed from scratch.
Right. Even the flavors.
Yes.
Even the strawberry has been designed in a lab somewhere to make you feel like you're eating strawberry ice cream when there's no
strawberry.
I mean, the simple example of Tropicana, right? How many of us have squeezed freshly orange juice and left it in the fridge, forgotten about it?
And then it didn't taste good.
And then anytime we squeeze freshly orange juice, it never tastes the same.
Correct.
Why are we expecting, from a packet for it to taste the same every time? I think in some ways, for us to be this incredibly intelligent species, this incredibly logical species, we kind of lose our bearings when it comes to food. I mean, I teach food and I struggle with sugar addiction, right? Sugar is my biggest problem. Like, I have to fight the urge to
Correct.
eat sugar. So there's something about food that is so primal and so inherent to all of us, and the companies have figured that out on how to tap on that. Yeah.
That's correct. That's correct. How important is it to cook a meal before you to cook before you eat something? I mean,
I
can
think
you
it's incredibly.
is salad something very Indian, or is it?
I don't think so.
No.
I've never had a
We've
salad.
always cooked our food.
I think so. Like
Okay.
even in Gujarati, like if we have kachumbar. It's like, vagharelu, kobi nu kachumbar.
Ah,
Yeah, I mean, I don't remember as a child ever having my mom saying, eat your salad.
yes. Maybe for the dal she did,
Kanda
कि
na,
dal khaje, but not for
ha.
no salad.
And like salad would be like, kakdi, tameta, kanda.
That's about it.
And
Yes,
that's also when guests come over, like not every day. I don't remember my mom ever doing that. So salad is a very probably Western concept. For us,
we've always cooked our food.
yeah, we've
So I think we should continue cooking our food.
There's a very interesting talk by Michael Pollan on why he says cooking is important. And I think it makes sense. He's like, you like French fries? Eat French fries. But once in a while, you make your own French fries. So, what happens with that is that you have to peel it, cut it, take the oil, fry it. You not only have to do the physical work, but the sensorial work with it as well, and all of that. And the end of it, you have to clean up all of that. And you have to figure out what do you do with so much oil that you use for frying.
Correct.
And so he says that by doing that yourself, you will limit the times you want to eat French fries.
Correct.
So to walk into McDonald's and just say, okay, give me
Correct. Makes
fries.
sense. Makes a lot of
So
sense.
in that sense, I guess it makes a lot of sense to cook your own meal. And I think cooking is such a fantastic community act.
Mm-hmm.
You and your wife cooking together, you and your children cooking together. It makes it a nice community activity, collective thing, and then makes you so proud. I cooked it. I mean, if you're a cook like me, then after you cook it, you're like, I cooked it. But, it can be something fun. It can be
True.
exciting.
Let's come to the situation of farmers and farming in India. What is the current agriculture situation in India compared to the world? I mean, they're producing, the West is producing a lot of stuff like corn. They're into major production of corn. Are we still, are we at that place where we are also following them blindly, or are we at a better place?
So, the West has a different way of looking at agriculture. They have industrialized their agriculture. They're very small. There is a very small amount of people who are in agriculture. If you take America, for example, they have more people in jail than the amount of people who are actually
Oh my God.
farmers. So if you have a list of professions and you're a farmer, then you come under the other. There is no farmer
Oh, okay, so
farming
there is-
profession.
They're that small.
Yeah, they're that small. For us, more than 60% of our population still depend on agriculture. So even though, like, as we drove through this area, a lot of the people in this area might not be farmers anymore, right? 100% farmers anymore. But they're still associated with farming. They might be going as daily laborers to farmers. They might have cattle. They might be foragers. They might be vegetable growers. So a large percentage of population still depends on agriculture. And majority of the agriculture in India is done by women,
Okay.
because a lot of men have transitioned to urban areas or other kind of industrial work, or they're electricians or rickshawalas or pan galla owners.
So farming is like a
That-
second sort of income
Yes,
for them,
yes.
where the man has gone.
Man has gone, the woman does all the work. He
Okay.
comes to make the decision what crop to grow, and then he comes back at the harvest time to sell the crop and keep the money. So feminization of agriculture has happened. We are going through one of the biggest agrarian crises in our country. A lot of the farmers are not able to meet their two ends meet. A lot of the farmers are facing the brunt of agriculture through climate change. I mean, if you look at this year itself, we had so much rain in the beginning,
And nothing after.
nothing after. Now they're predicting rains again on the 10th. Now the rice has already started seeding, right? If it's a heavy rain, then the rice will dislodge and fall, and that will affect production. So farming as it is a very risky business, because a lot of factors are not in your control at all. So, in a sense, we're going through a major agrarian crisis. And one of the reasons why the farmers protested in India last year for the whole year was because one of the things that our government was pushing for was a Western model of industrialization of agriculture.
Okay.
And that meant a lot of autonomy that farmers have over farming, control over their land, control over what they do with their land would be lost. And they thought that losing that would be losing their individuality, their life, their way of life. And so the fight was for that. So we definitely require a lot of policy change and a policy infusion. I mean, if you look at our budget, our infusion of investment in agriculture is minuscule. We, since we liberalized in the 1990s, we have not invested so much in agriculture as we have invested in IT or other industries. So in that sense, agriculture is like a stepchild that is not getting the attention that it requires. But recognizing that more than 60% of our population is still dependent on it, it requires the kind of dedicated attention, policy intervention, support to support the larger population.
Okay. Uh, so the farmers in our country who are unaware of the larger, I mean, it's not good of me to associate them as unaware, but I'm assuming most of them could be unaware. So how do they make informed decisions about about not being fooled by a Monsanto or a Bayer product? How I mean, how do they tackle the issue of
It's difficult. It's difficult. They do get sucked in by a lot of things, but a lot of the times they do get saved because they don't have the financial money required at the moment to get into that kind of
the
farming.
initial requirement?
The initial, the seed money or the fertilizer money. And so a lot of small and marginal farmers also grow food for sustenance. So like majority of so you have 1 biga or 2 biga of agricultural land, your thinking will be, let me grow rice for the season, let me go grow wheat for the season. So then I'm sorted for rice and wheat. Basic ખાવાનું થઈ ગયું. પછી બીજું બધું we can depend on the market. So in a sense, there is this desire to increase production. There is a desire to, go towards conventional things. But there is also this dependence on the land for sustenance. And so, in a way, they don't have the information to protect themselves from the influence of larger companies, but they also have this dependence on sustenance, which protects them from the
Okay.
larger influence.
Makes
Does
sense.
that make sense? Yeah.
Makes sense,
Yeah,
makes sense.
yeah.
How do you deal with issues of soil degradation and soil health in a good manner?
It's a long drawn process. It's a patience process because with soil degradation and soil health, you have to make it alive. You have to give it a lot of biomass. You have to give it a lot of nutrients. So in natural farming, they use a lot of cow dung, cow urine. There are so many traditional practices which are practiced by farmers all over India that enrich the soil. I mean, it's interesting to see that the organic farming movement started by the influence of Indian farmers. So when the British were ruling us, they would send a lot of scientists to India, because Indian raw materials propelled their industrial revolution, right? Cotton, sugar, indigo, all of the raw materials for their industrial revolutions were going from here. And so the East India Company would invite scientists to say, come and, see how they can increase the production. And one gentleman called Sir Albert Howard came to India and he studied. There were a few others, but I'm just mentioning Sir Albert Howard. They traveled all over India. And then he wrote that the Indian farmers don't really require any training or assistance. We need to learn from them because they understand their land the best. They understand how to reuse their resources and water to the best of the capacity. And he wrote a book called The Agricultural Testament.
Okay.
And that book then became one of the foundation books that became the foundation for the organic movement around the world. The term organic farming was termed by Rodale Institute. I forgot his first name, but Rodale Institute, the guy who started the Rodale Institute, he was influenced by Sir Albert Howard. Right? So things like these, I mean, the foundation of the organic movement also goes back to Indian farmers. So there is a lot of traditional knowledge. There is a lot of information, knowledge, practices available with the farmers. But with Green Revolution, what has happened is that we've undermined our farmers, right? We took this technology from the West, we implemented it here, and we told the farmers that we will tell you what to do. You don't know. हम सिखाएंगे आपको.
It's a top-down approach.
Top-down approach. And so from that perspective, slowly over a period of time, the farmer thought कि हाँ आप बताओ ना मुझे तो नहीं आता है. Like he does not value
Correct. Himself.
And slowly, gradually, through the natural farming and through the organic movement, a lot of people have been asking questions, practicing on the traditions that have been shared with them, experimenting. And so slowly, gradually, people are working on building soil health. But it's a long drawn process, it requires patience and time.
We've talked a lot about the technicalities of the soil, the crop, everything. But we cannot consider the aspect of finance when it comes to farming, because that's what is driving the farmer in a way, in a big way, to farm and all. So, I mean, to conclude, and the last but not the least question, and least important question is, what is the reason for so many farmer suicides, and how does it play, and how do they end up committing suicides?
Primarily because of the kind of conventional agriculture, right? So in a village, what happens is the agro seeds dealer or the person who we call it as a sahukar or the money lender, right? So the farmer does not always have cash in hand to start his agriculture. So it's paddy season. So supposing I need 20,000 rupees to buy the seeds, buy the fertilizer, irrigation money. So what do? I come to Keval and I get everything from him on credit. So you give the seeds to me on credit, you give everything to me on credit. And then I plant it. Now for supposing there's a flood that year. So my crop is gone, right? Nothing is saved. So then for the wheat, I come back to you and I take a loan from you again. And for some reason, that also fails. And so when a farmer goes through one or two cycles of these kind of systems, and in a lot of cases, you will notice that the suicides happen when the farmers are more or less involved in commodity crops. Commodity crops are like BT cotton, sugarcane, potatoes, cash crops, where they have to incur a lot of input cost. And then the price is decided by the market. The farmer has no control over the market. Farmer is the only one who buys everything on retail and sells everything on wholesale. Right? Only one. Supposing you're a businessman.
Correct.
And you manufacture a fan, you are going to demand from the market કે મારું cost of production આટલું થયું, એના ઉપર હું profit આટલો લઈશ, એટલે price આ છે. Farmer has no control over pricing of his produce. Market decides that, right? And so the volatility of the market is also influenced by the international market, right? Because we've liberalized our country. So we are mandatory to follow the rules of free trade and World Trade Organization and all of that. And so, because of circumstances like this, the farmer is left with no option but to take his own life, because there are no credit systems in place. The credit system depends on him having ownership of the land. So, supposing your grandfather owns the land in Unja, પણ એમણે વારસાઈ નથી કરાવી. So the land is in his name. Your father has 3 brothers, and the 3 brothers have 2 children each. And so if you want to apply for a loan on that land, you can't get it.
You need an approval from all of those.
Yes. And so those are the kind of legalities on the ground that affect the farmer. And so no bank is going to entertain the farmer. And so even though we dislike the middleman, he provides a service to the farmer, right? He provides him credit where no other systems are in place to help him. So a lot of situations like that, not getting the price discovery, the cost of inputs. Now, all the inputs are fossil fuel based. Chemical fertilizers, pesticides, all of that are made from fossil fuels. And so with the fluctuations in fossil fuel prices, the prices of those products grow up. But the return that he gets from his price stays the same.
Okay.
There's a gentleman called Devender Sharma, and he writes about farmers' issue. And he's written a paper where he's saying that farmers have subsidized our lives for more than 40, 50 years. He says that if you look at any of the jobs, whether you're a teacher or you're a chaprasi or anything, your income has increased by 300 or 400% since independence. Whereas the price that the farmer gets on his crop has increased only by 14 or 15%. Right? So he's not getting the due price. And the reason why we don't increase the price is that we want to keep inflation down.
Okay.
So in a sense, he's subsidizing all our lives. And, cumulative reasons like this lead to farmers' suicide.
Okay. Can we end on this note? Thank you so much, ma'am.
You're very welcome.